So in case you haven't heard, Humble Games recently went through the ringer in terms of financial struggles. In July of this year, Humble Games, the publishing company for Wizard of Legend 2, On Your Trail, Never Alone 2, and most notably in my opinion, Lost Skies, recently went under a quote restructuring. The company, as far as we know, stated that while this decision was not made lightly, that it came with much deliberation and careful thought, with the goal of ensuring stability and support of their developers and ongoing projects. They also state that this restructuring will have no impact on their operations at the Humble Bundle, which I'm sure is definitely the case since the Humble Bundle portion of the company is more or less effectively a separate entity entirely. Now, while this didn't sound like much of a grand change at first, contrary to the public statements of the company, much information was released by former employees, and among many, as was posted by Nicola Kwan, who was a biz dev at Humble Games, posted on LinkedIn at 9 a.m. on the 24th of July that all 36 employees of Humble were told that they were being let go, and that the company is shutting down. Another post was made by Chris Radley, the former creative lead at Humble Games, who left in 2022, where he stated, "I want it to be made abundantly clear. This is not a restructuring of operations. This is a total shutdown of Humble Games. Operations have been handed off to a third-party consultancy known as the Powell Group, and that no staff are left," where he also stated to not believe this AI message written by the parent company of Humble Games, Ziff Davis, who are trying to mitigate pushback, and that this is once again a failure of leadership across the board. And once again, hardworking, talented staff are paying the cost for their poor decisions. Every ex-employee is being gaslit by this narrative, and it's so disrespectful, is what he stated in his online post. One of the questions I know that I had when I first heard about this a while back is, who exactly is the Powell Group? How exactly do we know that they can handle taking over the entire prospect of becoming a publisher? And from what I understand, the Powell Group specializes in providing effective marketing, business, and business relationships with distributors. And based on their background, they have been known for providing consultancy and advisory roles for many different game companies. This includes Phantom Compass, Night Dive Studios, Seismic Squirrel, and many others. And given this background, there's not a well-documented history of them taking over the entirety of a game's publishing responsibilities. However, at least in this respect, we do know that they have a strong capacity for being capable, at least, of understanding the internal and necessary processes that help determine a publishing company's success. So while it's not as if they're putting in people who are completely unfamiliar with this line of work or position, it regardless will be a huge change for them, especially when it comes to adapting to where Humble Games employees left off in their work to the end of Lost Skies itself. Now, what's so unfortunate about all this is that Humble Games, despite having a bunch of high-end indie games under their belt already, including the first Wizard of Legend, Aegis, Forager, and even Slay the Spire, they even still are going to lay off everyone in the company and try and hide the reality of the situation. And while yes, they aren't technically wrong about it being a quote restructuring, the situation is undoubtedly misleading. Now, the question that remains here is how this affects Lost Skies, where I want to clarify here, Humble Games and Bossa Games officially partnered all the way back in 2023. And while they did become partners, Humble is and was Boss's official publisher. So in terms of understanding what the impact might be to the company's development of Lost Skies, it's important to understand what the purpose of being a publisher for a company is. In general, the name publishing more or less explains it, but as a standard, oftentimes publishing companies will offer largely marketing and distribution. This is to help push the game out to the right audience, as well as create a financially viable means for the game to be sold. And as far as we know, the plans for Lost Skies is for it to be made available on Steam. Now, in some cases, publishing companies may also offer different things like game translation, game testing for quality, and handle legal licensing and monetization. However, depending on the group, different types of publishing support is offered, depending on what some companies set up internally with their own contracts. Now, unfortunately, there isn't much public information on the specifics of whatever contract Bossa Games might have signed with Humble. So it is a question still of what aspects of the game release is in the air due to the Humble Games restructure. And to that end, it also begs the question of how much Bossa has communicated with Humble already, and if there is enough actively working plans sent over and set up before the Powell Group comes in to allow them to easily pick up from where they left off. Additionally, one other concern is workforce distribution. While the publishing team for Humble was relatively small already, seeing on the LinkedIn page for Powell Group, they hardly reached 20 team members, who now not only are picking up for where Humble left off, but additionally have less people to share and each work on the different games that Humble is already officially supposed to work on. And to add a small side tangent to this, I also noticed a considerable bump in the employee number on LinkedIn, and strangely around the same time frame as when this was going down, as well as a few months beforehand. So it does beg the question of whether or not this was something that may have already been planned out for some people in advance, in which maybe some employees who knew what was going to happen went over to work for the Powell Group so that they could continue working on these same projects. Or possibly they simply knew that an increase of business was coming from Humble and that they would get procured by them to perform this job, and that it would require more employees before they took on the job itself. But that is entirely just my conspiracy brain talking, so do take that with a grain of salt. Although what I can say is that a post was in fact made by one of Bossa Games administrator Savetta on their Discord of the 24th of July, the same day in which this all went down. He stated, "Hey all, just to jump on the Humble News conversations real quick, our senior management is in touch with the parent company and is actively figuring out what the next steps are. We continue to work on Lost Skies as normal and will 100% figure out the best way forward. Don't worry, we will keep you posted in the upcoming weeks," which I think definitely helps knowing that they have been on this since the very same day it occurred at Humble. But to the game development side, I think it's pretty safe to say that nothing for the most part should change. Bossa Games is the official developer for Lost Skies, so inherently I think in terms of a standard setback in development progress, likely this will make some impact in development time frame, as the company is made up of about 60-ish employees right now, some of which I imagine now need to focus on sorting out the logistics of working with the Powell Group, as well as make sure that they have a realistic plan put in place to ensure that the release times, marketing strategies, distribution, and game support aren't now all in jeopardy due to this Humble Games change. But at least for the time being, to those that may have heard about this event that's going down with Humble Games, I felt very worried about what the outlook for Lost Skies is moving forward. While I can't provide any other official statements from the company, I think based on the understanding and knowing that Humble effectively is a separate entity from Bossa in game development process itself, we shouldn't have much to worry about in respects to the game's progress moving forward. So within that, I hope it offers some solace. Either way, I hope you have found this at least somewhat interesting and helpful in understanding the full scope of what went down with Humble, as well as clearing up some of the rumors around Lost Skies being supposedly over before it even began, when in fact it is nowhere near that kind of scenario. Either way, I want to thank you all for the time, as well as thank my first YouTube channel member, Gecko, for offering your support to this channel. It truly means the world, and if any of you are considering to help support this channel by becoming a member, I will be sure to have your name listed at the end of every video of mine. But again, there is no obligation, simply being here is more than enough. So with that, I thank you all once again, and like always, have a beautiful rest of your day, boys. Peace.